Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of 100 Words or Less, the podcast. I am your host, Ray Harkins, episode number 65. This is one I'm extremely excited to bring you. It is with Spencer Hickman, the owner of Death Waltz Records, and more on him in a minute. Let's talk about propertyofzack.com. They are our media partner, and I think that's the first time I've called them that, but they are. And I apologize. I sound sick. That's because I am. I've got a bunch of shit in my face, i.e. snot. So if I'm nasally, that's why. Propertyofzack.com. They are a great partner. They are a great site. If you care about independent music, go there. Find out all of the newest, hottest, coolest, whatever adjective you want to put on it, information about the bands that you more likely than not care about. And if you don't care about, you'll find out quickly. And you visited the site anyways. So thanks for trying. Propertyofzack.com. And if you're also poking around online, which most of you are, visit the show's website, 100wordspodcast.com. I post stuff in between the weeks that I post shows. So, from Tuesday to Tuesday, because that's when I post new episodes, in case you haven't noticed, you'll be able to find recommendations, fun stuff to, kind of waste your time on, because after all, that's kind of what a lot of us do online anyways. Visit there. Review the show if you're feeling ever so kind. Go to iTunes, type in 100 Words Podcast. It'll pop up. You can drop some nice sentences if you're feeling that gracious, or you can just pop on the number of stars that you care to give the show. I'm pretty proud of the fact that we're close to a 5, and it's like 4.9 something or other, and that's awesome. I appreciate people giving nice feedback, because I do read those, and I take those all into consideration when I am recording new episodes and guests and all that type of stuff. So all the business out of the way. Spencer Hickman. Well, basically, this kind of shows a little insight to my own personal psyche, and I think something that I can equate to being an only child. I didn't know about this dude or his record label up until maybe about less than 6 months ago. And I just became wholeheartedly obsessed with what he is doing. So he's based out of the UK. He is a person that's been involved in music for ever and ever, as you'll find out in our interview. He is responsible for taking soundtracks to sort of cult, horror, science fiction movies and bringing them to life in the vinyl form. And he does amazing work with artists that do these really, really cool, specific pieces for each release as it comes out. He did like Halloween, he did The Fog, he did Let the Right One In. He's done a lot of amazing scores. And, a lot of people would be like, listening to soundtracks, like that sounds fucking boring as shit. I promise you, each one of these soundtracks lives on its own. And even if you haven't seen the movie and you listen to the soundtrack, you could be like, oh, wow, like this is cool. These things live independently of the movies, but then also obviously augment and make your appreciation for those movies even greater. So basically this dude hit 2 sweet spots for me, cult movies and vinyl, and I was like, I am all in, and fucking bought as many things as I possibly could from him. So then I just hit him up on Twitter. I was like, yo, I would love to interview you because I don't know who you are. And he agreed because he was randomly in LA, and I went over to his friend's house, and we hung out for about an hour and found out we had a lot in common. I'll bring that interview to you in a second, but I have to get 2 random things off my chest. And if you don't want to listen to this, that's fine. Fast forward like 4 minutes, then you'll be good. I just recently finished a book called Louder Than Hell. It's an oral history on metal from like the inception to kind of where we're at now by the author John Wiederhorn. And if I'm butchering his last name, I apologize, but just search Louder Than Hell and you will find it. It's like a 900-page, just epic book in regards to the music scene. And when I say music scene, I mean metal. It's interesting because towards the end of the book, it started to focus on what was happening in Orange County in regards to metal and hardcore. So you bands like Throwdown, 18 Visions, Bleeding Through, a lot of these things that were, kind of popping up. And it's weird because as a person who was involved with that scene, especially during that time, just because my old band was playing in conjunction with a lot of these bands, it was an interesting feeling to kind of look at my own self and be like, I am literally a footnote in this book. I'm not really. Just to think of like, okay, you're not mentioned in this book. And like, the ego starts to play like, oh, he didn't do that good of a job. Of course he fucking did. He did a great job on documenting that. But each scene obviously has your A-list bands and your B-list bands and your C-list bands. And that's obviously why we were not included in that. And plus, we weren't really even metal to begin with. But that is not even why I bring this up. It brought up these thoughts in my head of being like, where you're comfortable in your life. Like the sort of idea that, we all want to leave some sort of legacy, whether or not it's like a family, whether or not it's professionally. We all want to have these impacts greater than what our life is on this planet. At least most people do. I don't know if I necessarily want to have this like, oh, I can't wait to fucking change the world and like my name will live on for 100 years past my death. I don't know. I guess I don't personally believe in that, but I do believe in having some recorded evidence of why I was here or what I was doing, whether it's like, something that my son can refer to where it's like, oh, this is what my dad was into. And then hopefully his children will be able to look at this in context and be like, oh yeah, like my grandpa was a dude and played in bands and liked music. I don't know. It's just interesting to kind of like read a book and then have something that like you knew so intimately and were involved in, and then have it kind of in black and white in front of you and be like, oh yeah, I know all those stories. Like that's cool. Needless to say, it just kind of puts legacy in perspective when you read something like that. Because I'm getting of the age where it's like, oh, okay, like you can look back retrospectively and be like, oh, wow, that's interesting. Here was a scene. This was meaningful. You should have paid attention to it. And this is why. Great book. Check it out. Without any further ramblings, I will bring you the interview with Spencer. And great dude. So much fun shit. Yeah, he just had a lot of great things to kind of expose in regards to starting your own business, using all the expertise that you've built up in your life and kind of doing something new and challenging, exciting, and scary at the same time. Here we are, Spencer Hickman, Death Waltz Records. Enjoy.
It's like the boutique bedroom operations where it's just like, it's so hard to get that started and off the ground when you have like a big vision for something. If you don't have like, you're like, who do I talk to?
Yeah, you got to have contact. I know I've worked in the industry for so long.
Right. Like, I mean, how I discovered Death Waltz and then obviously you as a person was, it was like, I want to say it was maybe like 6 or 7 months ago. And this is honestly what gets me so excited about independent music in general, like still, where you look under a little rock and then you're just like, holy shit, like this is here, this exists.
Yeah.
This label that releases amazing soundtracks from movies that I enjoy, like I just didn't know this existed. And so, you dive into that world and it's great that those things can obviously still exist and still be able to find an audience, have a voice.
No, it's been insane.
Yeah. Right. Because when was the actual quote unquote launch of it? Like you like put it out there in the world.
Well, in fact, I was at NAMM this time last year. We'd launched the website, and I was talking about our first 2 releases, which we'd announced, but they weren't on sale yet.
Sure.
I reckon they went on sale on like the 21st of May.
It's incredible.
I want to say.
Yeah, in like a year, and then all of a sudden it's just like, oh wow.
I know, we've got some like, I signed a couple of huge things, which are not.
Yeah, you're not previous. Yeah, put it out there. Yeah.
But I mean, like the end of the year,
sure.
I've got some US only releases.
Oh, amazing.
Which will retail at cheaper than
what
retail cheaper than the. I mean, I guess I've been seeing them in stores for like $28.
Sure.
These will be like $20.
Oh, that's great.
And they're huge.
That's amazing.
I'm like so excited.
Right.
We've worked with, so now working with big major labels.
Sure.
Getting like huge directors to approve changes and stuff, and you're like,
because is that generally how it works? Where it's like obviously usually the master rights lie with some music, like some studio or label.
Yeah, it's, you know what? It's different. Everything's weird. So everything's completely different, and obviously it's music industry, and it's music industry in 2013. So there's no rules whatsoever. Right. So certain things like John Carpenter owns the rights to Assault on Precinct 13.
Okay.
So he's just giving me the rights.
That's good.
To that. We're going to do that. He's going to do all the sleeve notes. He doesn't own the rights to any of his other films.
Oh, okay.
But he's now writing these sleeve notes for all of our past releases, and we're going to reissue them with a full sleeve.
Oh, okay.
And a booklet.
Oh, amazing.
Picture booklet inside.
Sure,
so they're slightly different. And then we'll make that picture booklet kind of available as a PDF to anyone that's purchased.
Oh, amazing. Yeah.
Because I don't want people to have to buy it twice.
Right, of course.
But when you've got,
you're like
John Carpenter,
right. You got this cool shit.
Write sleeve notes for this.
Totally.
So I'm like, that's amazing, man, because he's a hero.
Oh, of course, yeah. Because my only experience with soundtrack stuff is just, very like your terrible like major label stuff where it's just like, movies like Beer Fest and shit like that, or it's just and I only was like a project manager, so people were just like, it got put on my desk and they're like,
to do it,
and so it's like, you see that side of things, but then obviously you see the sort of, the creator of the art being able to obviously, like you said, have all the rights and stuff. So it's interesting.
Yes, it's been really interesting because I've had a really good split of stuff that's with companies,
sure,
and stuff that's with individuals.
Right.
We're doing 3 releases for Halloween. Like Halloween is going to be like slash a month for Death Waltz. They're like 3 of my favourite 80s films and definitely favourite 80s scores. They're phenomenal.
That's amazing.
And all of those, the rights lie with the director.
And I'm sure
or
that
the
makes
composer, which makes it way easier.
Of course, less red tape.
And it's really amazing. Like you can go to certain people, you send them an email and you're like, hey, this is what we do, this is what we've achieved, this is what, and stuff, especially when you're talking to Americans, stuff saying, like we had this 10-page article in Spin magazine and stuff, it really holds.
It resonates, yeah. Sure.
So you go to those people and they're just like, you really want to release that? Like,
I'm sure their heads are like, what? Yeah. Why would you want to revisit?
Vinyl? So, and then it's really awesome because then they get really excited.
Sure.
Because they check the website out and they're like, wow, this isn't just some like shitty little...
Yeah, mom and pop, this looks terrible. Yeah.
So,
I'm sure, like you said, it gets them excited because it reinvigorates their art to where it's just like, wow, this can be introduced to a whole new generation of kids that have never even known about this.
Two of these guys one only ever did 1 soundtrack.
Yeah.
Oh no, in fact, both of them only ever did 2 soundtracks, and they were sequels to the movies that we're releasing. So
that's amazing.
It's like, I think what I always wanted to do is, I had someone on our Facebook page sort of accusing me of only going after sort of easy soundtracks.
Oh, okay. The low-hanging fruit. Yeah.
And then sort of saying, you're a British label, you're completely ignoring British film scores. It's a disgrace. I don't know what you think you're doing. And I was like, I just release scores to films I love. That's the only criteria that I've got. Well, I don't want to release, and I was like, I've just had a 5-year deal with Hammer Film.
Right.
You can't get any more British.
Right, that is so... Right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, I probably don't as much now as when I first started. I really took criticism to heart.
Sure.
Because
it's
the
so
label is a really personal thing, and the idea is all me. It's no one else.
It's an extension of yourself. So by default, it's hard for you to remove yourself from it. So I totally get it.
Although now I'm way better than I was, and I can just go like, whatever.
Yeah, you're like, you do your thing, I'll do mine, that's fine.
I've always wanted to release stuff that I love. Sure. I've always wanted to mix it with big stuff and then small stuff.
Sure.
Which is why I released The Devil's Business. Mm-hmm. That film hasn't even come out in America.
Right.
Like, there are people in the States that own that score.
Right.
That don't even know the movie.
Right.
And some of the stuff that I've got coming up is more niche than things I've released.
That's amazing.
And that's what I want to do. I never wanted to be known as a reissue label, which is like why we're releasing Maniac. Mm-hmm. I'm talking to the guys about releasing Kiss of the Damned, because that score is phenomenal.
Cool.
And I never wanted to be pushed into a niche of being a soundtrack reissue label. I'm really glad now, because there's a couple of people who are now about to release soundtracks, and the blueprint is exactly the same as Death Waltz.
Sure.
But, they're just going to do...
That's just what they're going to do, right?
Yeah, so...
Yeah, you're able to... You want to make your like, the idea of the label, it's, like, scalable, and it obviously will be... It all can be part of the same family, but like you said, you're not in just that corner.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's why, when I first started, it was like cult and horror soundtracks on vinyl, and then I was thinking, well, Donnie Darko and Let the Right One In, really, you class them as cult movies, but then I don't know if they're really, truly cult films, because they got a large following.
Right.
And then it was like, actually, you know, and Let the Right One In I think is like a love story. It's not,
it is.
And it's just happens to be wrapped around a vampire tale.
Right.
And then I kind of struggled for a while because I was thinking, I just don't want to be known as a horror soundtrack. Especially when you go to someone who doesn't operate in that world, because they go, I don't know if I want to be associated with that. So that's why I came up with the tagline, like the art of soundtracks.
Right.
Because it just
it expands
everything that I want to do. And I'm a huge, huge horror and exploitation fan. Hence why I have shining tattoos. And,
yes, exactly.
You know,
your art,
Brain-Eater's tattoo. But, you know, I love film and love music. So there's so much out there.
Oh, of course.
That I want to do.
Yeah.
And you know what? If there's people now coming up who are just going to do what we did when we started, I'll leave them to it because I've got other things.
Right. You want to expand. It's like, you feel like you've been able to accomplish what you wanted to. I mean, there's still more you want to do within that, but you've been able to accomplish what you wanted to do initially, and then you just want to build off that.
Yeah.
I mean, that only makes sense.
Yeah.
It's just
and, you know, we started to do events now, so
on
Halloween, we're flying Fabio Frizzi over from Italy to play a church in London.
Amazing.
And we've sold, it holds nearly 1,000 people. We've sold 700 tickets already.
That's great.
And we're in May.
Yeah, May.
You know, you know,
you got some time.
Yeah. I'm doing an event with my friend Josh, he's like one of the premier rep theatre screening guys in London. So he finds original prints, 35, 16 mil of kind of lost films and screens them. And so he found a 16 mil scope print of The Fog, which is mint and unused.
Wow.
So we've booked this church. We're decking it out with lighthouses, fog, lasers.
Yeah, it's an experience.
Yeah, so that's going to be for the album launch. So that's going to be to launch the Fog, our release.
Right.
That'll be the first time anyone's seen the artwork, which is by Dinos Chapman.
That's amazing.
And it'll be the screening. There's half hour's worth of trailers on 16mm beforehand. And it'll be an event.
Right.
And it's already sold out. And I had an email off someone today going, oh my God, I live over the road from that place and I didn't get a ticket.
Oh. And you're like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you just found out about it now.
So I want to do that. And you know, and Fabio wants to come to the States. And I really want to do things like that. But obviously to bring an 8-piece band and then have a string quartet.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of logistics.
It makes it a lot more expensive than it does doing it in Europe. But I definitely want to do things over here.
Right.
I DJ'd on Friday night down in Silver Lake Echo Park.
Yeah.
And it was really small, kind of soiree. And
Sure.
But it was really awesome, really good. And it's odd, man. People came out and they were like, oh, they love the label. Stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. And it kind of freaks me out a little bit.
Sure.
I have to be honest.
I could understand because it's especially when it's you're working, I mean, you have on sort of, the back end of the music industry where it's when I say back end, it's you're not prevalent in a band. And that's you have the support staff, which is labels and everybody else, record stores, and then you have the bands or whoever. So it's it's weird for you because it's you've never, most normal people don't view themselves as an icon and so it's you have to shift your mental your headspace where it's just oh wow, people will recognize me for this thing that they're passionate about.
It's amazing. I mean, I flew in the other Saturday, and on Sunday we got up, we went record shopping, we were in Amoeba. So I'm just flicking through the racks at Amoeba, and there's a guy next to me. I'm with a couple of friends, and there's a guy next to me, he's got his basket, and he picks up They Live and The Devil's Business, and puts them straight in his basket. And I'm looking at my friends going, oh my God, that's buying my records.
That's happening right now in front of me.
In Amoeba as well. So you're holy wow, that's amazing. So, and I was just really excited to see someone buying. I mean, it's every time I go into a store and I see this stuff on the walls, it blows my mind.
Of course. Well, yeah, because that's you're coming from a place of you're genuine about what it is that you're putting out, and then when you see,
because I'm just a fan as well. Like, I'm not like some
dude,
crazy businessman.
Right? Here's a mogul. Yeah. And it's not like anyone would look at the business decision to be like, all right, I'm going to put out some soundtracks on vinyl. Like, fucking, you're going to make $1 million.
Because you never are. But like this guy, he was further down the alphabet than me.
Soundtrack
section.
Of course.
And I was like, shit.
Yeah.
What's he got?
Yeah,
What's
damn
he
it.
got?
He's beat me. Yeah.
Shit. So that's really amazing. And then we went to Analog, and those guys were lovely, and they were like really, really lovely about the label and
that's awesome.
And stuff like that. And you think it's pretty amazing.
To
be in that position.
Because I always like to trace back, like essentially what people, why they arrive at where they're at currently. And born and raised in the UK, like that's what city in particular?
I was born in Birmingham.
Oh, okay, yeah. Home of Napalm Death.
Yeah, I know all those guys.
Of course.
Yeah, Birmingham's pretty small.
Yeah,
even though it's the second city.
You see, especially when you look at like artists from the UK, and like especially when it's like all this cross pollination to where and I think it speaks to the UK music scene in general. even to this day, where it's just like the scope of what I guess your general band is aware of is much more so than like I look at like a band from Southern California, like when they start playing and their ultimate goal is to be on Warped Tour. That's all they pay attention to.
Yeah.
Whereas like, bands, just because you have there's a smaller section, they're just aware of more initially. And so that's what I think.
If you start a band in the UK, you want to go and play Europe and Japan.
Right.
That's what everyone wants to go and play Japan.
Right.
You can buy crazy stuff there.
Yeah, for sure. And so what was your family structure like? Brothers and sisters?
I've got a sister who, she's into music, but not like my dad was in a band.
Oh, okay.
When he was really young, and they released like a 10-inch single.
Okay.
And they had a management deal. And they supported they were a local band. They were pretty big in Birmingham. They supported like the Rolling Stones and the Beatles.
Sure. So they were kind of like, you need to play with them when you go to Birmingham.
Yeah. So they were big, and they had an offer to go to London, and they'd been playing together since they were like 13, 12, 13, and the drummer didn't want to go, so they didn't go. My dad still sings. That's like how he earns his money. My dad's got like a great voice, man.
Really? That's amazing.
He does like proper kind of Frank Sinatra.
I was about to say, so he's like a crooner. That's
Yeah. And he's still doing it every weekend, man. He's got like 2 agents and stuff.
That's amazing. So he just gets kind of like flown to sort of like, parties or whatever they need him at.
He goes to Benidorm for like 6 weeks a year and ends up doing all these clubs out there and stuff. You're like, how old are you? You're not a teenager.
Right. You're like, my dad's a lounge singer essentially.
Because my mom grew up in the music scene as well, and like I remember like 2 years ago being at home. I don't visit that often, but when I do, I just hang out with her. And like she was watching like Glastonbury or something, and she was like singing along to the Arctic Monkeys, and I was just like, really?
Like what?
Yeah, you know.
Well, because you view your parents, especially from even if they are musical, it's like they're
stuck in their time.
Exactly.
It's funny because I visited just before I flew out. I went home for a week because my sister's got a kid, and it was my nephew's birthday. Actually, every year I'm at Nam, every year he's 2, but like it's his birthday. So I went up the week before, and I had to approve the test pressings for the fog.
Oh, sure.
And we're on a really, really tight deadline because we've got this event.
The live event, sure.
So I was like, all right, well, I'm away. I'm in Birmingham for a week, and then I get back for a day, and then I'm flying to the States.
Right.
So they ship them to Birmingham. So me and my dad sat at his and
amazing.
like listened to them on his old like 1970s like Pioneer stereo and
stuff. That's incredible.
And it was just really funny. And my dad was like, I think the Fog's like my favourite of his. Oh no, I quite like the Thing. Like
that's amazing. Yeah, so that you're able to bond over that.
Yeah. So it was really fun, man.
That's cool.
And, they're all...
And so they were basically, as you were growing up, they were making their living within did your mom work in the music industry as well? Or she was like
not at all. She was just like
helping, raising you guys.
Yeah.
So obviously, since music was such a central part of your life, like how How did you develop your own musical identity, like going into high school and stuff?
It's really funny because I grew up being force-fed the Beatles.
Sure.
I can't listen to the Beatles.
I can imagine. Yeah.
I hate them. And that was really controversial, but I don't want
it's your parents' music. It's rooted in that. I get that.
And then my dad brought me a guitar, and it was like a Gibson Sunburst. I had guitar lessons for quite a few years, and it was all I learned was the Beatles, and all I learned was like the Animals.
Everything you didn't want to learn, I'm sure.
Yeah. No. At the time, it was cool. And
sure.
The only records I bought myself is that I got my dad to buy me like the soundtracks to the Muppet Show 1 and 2, the TV series.
Oh yeah, of course.
And then I got the Star Wars soundtrack.
Sure.
Like in a really beautiful gatefold with a massive poster.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's essentially where the label, is grand. Stems from. Really. Sure. So I used to listen to that record with this poster, and it was amazing. It wasn't a shot from a movie. It was this really rough painted.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like attack on the Death Star, really
like sketched out.
Yeah, really amazing. And then as soon as I got to secondary or high school,
secondary, yeah.
As soon as I got to high school, I just started hanging out with kids that were a lot older than me. And they were all into like goth, and so I think when I got to high school, I was listening as everyone else was at the time. The Smiths, New Order.
Sure. Because what era was this? I mean, what it was like?
This was like 80.
Yeah, that's the early 80s, maybe.
Early 80s,
yeah. Which I mean,
and I had this weird mix of being into like really new romantic stuff like Japan, and then Adam and the Ants, and Duran Duran, and then that led on to stuff like the. Like early Simple Minds and stuff like that. Sure. And then that just led into like I discovered The Cure, and then I was off. It was black hair, crimped, back comb, all in black.
You're diving into that immediately.
Yeah. And then I was like 14, 15, I was hanging out with kids who were like 21.
Oh, okay.
I worked in this really cool record shop. So basically, I used to go into Birmingham City Centre. There was a record store called Vinyl Dreams in this place called Oasis Market, which was this crazy place where normal kids didn't go, and they'd go, it's all weird in there. And like Zig Zig Sputnik had a shop in there called Sex, and it was just an odd.
It was the fringe mini mall.
yeah. And then so I was going in there to buy like records like Hickman and Bunnyman and stuff like that. Sure. And then I used to hang out there every Saturday. Me and this kid called Nick, who became friends. He was like the same age as me. And eventually, and I know this sounds like a cliche, and I know it sounds like bullshit, but it was like total high fidelity. And Barry Steiner, that owned the shop, said, "Do you guys just want to work for me on Saturdays? Yeah, because you're here, right? Putting records out, tidying the racks, talking to customers." And I was just like, yes. So I was like 40.
Right, so I've arrived.
So I was working in this record store, and there were two really cool record stores. There was Vinyl Dreams and Swordfish. And Vinyl Dreams edged it for me because like they had like a massive like thrash metal section, skate metal section, as well as all the goth stuff. So I really early got exposed to a really wide range of alternative music.
I love to hear that because it's like I think that's so. Like I worked from like 18 to about 22. I worked at an independent record store down in Orange County. It was like a small little chain. There's like 3 stores, but same sort of experience. Like, because I mean, I grew up in like the hardcore straight edge punk scene. And so, I was listening to like Strife, Snapcase, Earth Crisis. And like, those bands are so important to me. But it was like, when I started to work at the record store, it just opened my eyes. I was just like, hey, have you heard Caius? And I was just like, what the fuck is this? And like, having that singular experience of being exposed to different stuff and making your music view wider, it's like, I would not trade that for anything. Because it's like, if you don't have that experience, you kind of get stuck in a rut and you aren't open to other things. It's great that you had that experience so young.
And that was it. And then it kind of stopped hanging out with most of my friends at school because there was only a couple of them who were really into that. And then, there's this guy called Pete, and this girl called Spider. She used to run like Gary Newman's fan club and stuff. And they were
with
like
a name like Spider, I would hope so.
Yeah. And they were like really a lot older than me, but they were awesome, man. They would smuggle me into places wherever they could.
Sure.
They would invite me to their house parties. So I'm like hanging out with these kids who are like 6 years older than me and stuff. Yeah. And they're not treating me like a kid.
Sure.
They're treating me like one of them.
That's huge because it's like obviously in high school, a lot of the stereotypical experience of a kid is like, you know, I feel like I'm an adult, but I'm still being treated like a child.
Yeah.
And so for you to have that experience
these guys
outside,
just like,
yeah.
you know, so that was amazing. And then from then on, I was really good at school in the beginning, but in the end, I just was like, I don't really care. And then because I wasn't very good at the way it works back home, I don't know how it works in the States, but
sure.
You get to a point when you hit like 13 and you have to choose what syllabus you want to do. So
really? So it's kind of like a how we do it over here, where it's like in high school or secondary school, you don't choose anything until you graduate. Then you go to college. Then you choose what we call your major.
We do this younger. So I wanted to do music and art, but because I wasn't very good at chemistry and math, they wouldn't let me do those two things.
Really?
Now I'm going, these are like the only two things I'm really, really good at.
Right.
Like, this is what I really love.
Sure.
And they were like, yeah, but you're not good enough here to do that. So I couldn't do them.
Wow.
So then I didn't kind of rebel, but I just lost interest. And I was just like, well, I don't want to do history, physics,
English,
all that stuff. I liked it. I was good at English. So like
that's what I feel. I feel is kind of like the default, where it's like, you know, every like sort of sensitive artist, musician type, if they can't do that, they'll always fall into English because you're still using words.
Yeah.
Right.
So I got kind of a bit disillusioned and left school, and I was like, I'm not going to go back to school. And I was really good at cooking. My other love has always been cooking.
Oh, okay.
Like my nan did that. My mom did it as a job. My grandma did it as a job.
Oh, okay.
So I was always cooking from an early age. I'm really interested in it. So I went to college for a year to sort of learn chefing. But
when you dropped out of secondary, 2 questions about that. How did your parents take that?
I wasn't. You know what? It's not a big deal.
Really?
Like it is over here. So I didn't drop out. I finished school.
Oh, okay.
And then just said, I'm not going to go to sixth form. Well, you call it sixth form, where you go on for like sixth form. Yeah.
Oh,
that's where you go on for like extended studies for a couple of years.
Right. Essentially, it's kind of how college is.
Yeah.
Right,
and I was like, I'm not going to do that, and I've got no interest in doing that.
Okay.
So
obviously, because of your parents' background and them sort of understanding how music works, like, were they kind of like, what the fuck is Spencer doing? Like,
you know what? I don't think my parents have ever understood what I've done, right? Until a couple of years ago, when Record Store Day became huge,
right? And
then I'm on TV, on the news, on BBC One,
right?
And my mum's like, "Oh my god, you're on! Oh my god, why are you on like the news on TV?" And I'm like, because this thing is a big deal,
right?
Yeah, I'm like, people really care about this stuff. And then I think they've never been, like, they've always been proud of me because I've always done what I wanted to do. I'm one of those people that never felt like I couldn't do something. So, like, I put film festival, like 24-hour horror marathon film festivals on. I did a fanzine when I was young.
Yeah.
I released a 7-inch by a band from San Diego, hardcore band from San Diego called Spanacorzo.
Of course, yeah. That's amazing. So you released it over
there, yeah.
And
then we toured Spanacorzo and the Swing Kids in Europe. So I've always felt that you can do stuff if you want to do stuff.
Right.
You don't have
to. It's that whole. I mean, it always gets me so excited when I hear this, because it's like it's obviously like the DIY mentality, where it's like, even though you don't know how to do something, all you do is roll up your sleeves and try to figure it out on your own. Right.
And I never got paid for doing that, which is why I never really released. I released a 7-inch by Spanacorzo, and then we toured them, and then we toured Swing Kids, and then I released a 7-inch by a New York band called Dahlia Seed.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't get paid by anyone. So I couldn't put another record out because you just and it was DIY, so you'd be sending people,
here you go, here's 20
records, right? And it was there was no internet then. This is crazy, man. This is like 96, and there was no internet,
of course,
which is mind blowing when you look back at it. Totally. So Grant from Spanacorzo sent me the master through the post, and we were sending letters to one another.
Right. So you got into the, I guess, aggressive nature of music, like, because obviously if you were paying attention to what was happening in San Diego, like, did that, like...
what's really strange? I have no idea, apart from the fact that I worked in record stores, so we get this stuff in on import.
Sure.
I have no idea how I discovered all those bands. Like, Chris, whose house we're in now, is Carly Lennox's house to do this.
Yeah.
Me and him were massively into hardcore.
Okay.
So like we used to go on tour with like Sensefield on Revelation.
Of course.
You know, we used to hang out with like guys like Quicksand.
Of course.
And
so it's like basically when any of those type of bands would go to the UK,
we would go on tour. We'd go to every show in the car across the country.
Sure.
So like that first Quicksand tour, we went to they did 8 shows and we went to every single one.
That's amazing.
You know, and then I don't know. I think when you're just really like, I'm just really into music.
Right.
It doesn't really matter what it is.
What genre? So yeah.
I mean, there's certain genres I don't like.
Right. You stray away from because you're just like, this isn't.
I don't get it.
Right.
Don't get reggae.
Sure.
But I like hip hop.
Right.
Which I've never been able to figure out why. But reggae, I just can't. It just doesn't do anything.
Sure.
Which is kind of weird. And then
I think we're, once we experience some semblance of a community, like, and that is from like obviously going to shows and being like, okay, wow, like these same 200 people are here to watch this band. Like you just get drawn towards it, and you seek that out no matter what, because there's obviously so many different facets in music that have that same sort of community aspect. And so
we used to drive to Manchester to go and see a Veil, then you'd drive up to Bradford to go and see like Split Lip.
Of course.
I was massively into archive. I mean, I bought this. Not that anyone can see.
No. Oh yeah, the Texas, of course.
The reissue,
Texas the Reason reissue. Yeah.
And they're playing their Fine Leather show.
Yeah.
London. So me and a couple of friends are going to go.
That'll be incredible. Yeah.
Times.
I just saw them when they did the LA show, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
Like
I saw them like 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
I mean, they played a couple of shows in the UK, and then I saw them. I was lucky enough to see them.
Yep.
At CBGB's at a Revelation all day.
Yep. That's awesome. So it sounds like that. Obviously, you dove into every facet that you kind of like have an interest in.
Yeah, it's odd. I think if I drew a musical tree of things, I always gauge how into something I am, like by how I dressed at the time. So when I was a hardcore kid, like me and Chris were joking about this yesterday.
Yeah.
And in fact, last night at dinner, because I was like, we used to wear like Krishna beads.
Of course.
Shelter and like, what on earth were we doing?
Right.
And then everything was bought from thrift stores.
Of course.
When you're like a hardcore kid.
Of course.
And then when I was a goth, I was just like, black. But everything I've been into sort of made sense in a weird way, like in a if you trickle it down and put it on a piece of paper.
And especially when you combine that with youth, it's like, of course, you just feel like, I'm going to adopt every single thing that I see out there. I like that equation of like my direct passion for something. If it reflects my lifestyle, then I was totally into it.
Yeah. And then at that time, well, from like early 80s, 83 or something.
Sure.
That's when you could go to a video store in the UK.
Yep.
And I would walk in there as a 13-year-old kid, and they would rent me Cannibal Holocaust.
Right, here you go.
Spit on Your Grave.
Right.
I remember we bunked off school, and we did a double bill of Last House on the Left and Cannibal Holocaust at my friend Stephen's house.
That's
incredible. He was just like, whoa.
Yeah, you're like, this was the best day that we did not go to school ever.
And then, of course, all that stuff started to get banned, and there was like uproar, and then I was hooked, and I just wanted to watch every single one of those video nasties, and my dad had 2 videos, so I'd go to the store, we'd rent it, and then I'd bootleg it, so nice. I could carry on watching it, because back then, to buy a video cassette,
it's like $100.
Man and the rest, it was like £78 to buy a rental copy.
Right,
like
dude.
$50.
I tried to. I can't remember who I was talking to. Just a friend, and I was saying like I remember because I'm 32, so it's like I was like when I first started to get into videos, like a fucking Gumby when I was a kid or whatever, and I always remember I was like, Mom, could we buy this on Betamax? And she was like, they're like $120. And I was like, what do you mean? But I want to see Gumby all the time. And
so I used to rent them because we had a card and it was about, I think it was £1.50 a night. So I wouldn't, even if I didn't watch it that night, we'd just copy it. Which obviously is highly illegal.
Highly illegal. Not recommended.
Because look what's happened to the music and film industry because of people that do that.
But then I look at it from the flip side too, where it's just like, because you did that,
I now own all those.
Exactly. It has made you that much more devoted and probably spent 3 times as much money.
Yeah, because I buy...
Of course.
I'm one of those weird collectors that I'm like, I'll just buy this because it's a different cover. Or,
of course. Right, yeah, there's a slightly different...
Extra,
There's an added DVD bonus. Obviously with the record store experience, and like basically that just kind of like once you started to work at that store, that was like the store that kind of you always wanted to work in music and stuff.
Yeah, and I didn't really think I could do anything else. I loved selling music.
Yeah.
So
and never a desire to play, like try to actually play in a band, or you just...
I was in bands and stuff.
Okay.
But, I've put a couple of records out, but I never liked getting up on stage and playing my own stuff. Because it felt, if someone didn't like it, or if something went wrong, it was too personal.
Oh, sure.
Me. So
hey, that can relate back to our earlier conversation with the way the label. I can understand. So it was...
But I'm perfectly fine DJing. Like, I've DJed to, a lot of people. And I've DJed to 2 people. I've DJed to 1,000 people, but...
Because it's not your music.
Yeah.
You're a curator of other music.
And because I know... Well, because I think I know what's good.
Sure.
It's easier for me to do a set and play and stuff like that. And
that makes sense.
I kind of enjoy that. Whereas I don't. I mean, the last band we were in was this. In fact, I'd like to say we were a bit ahead of our time. It was like a really doomy, heavy, electronic film style kind of metal.
Okay.
We played quite a few shows. We put a record out. And all the song titles were like... horror film.
Amazing.
And the band was called Haddonfield, Illinois, which is obviously where Michael Miles is from.
Exactly.
And the titles were like Camp Crystal Lake and Stupid Bunny Suit.
Homages to all of your favorite movies.
And it was really fun. And I did listen to a track the other day and which samples Zombie Flesh Eaters. Interesting. And I was like, actually really good.
Yeah, you're like, that held up. That wasn't so bad.
And that was like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But
when people make the joke, like music critics and people that work at record stores are failed musicians.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's completely true. Yeah.
100% true.
Yeah.
And, the idea of like a failed musician, because it's like obviously, especially coming from like the scene that obviously both of us have an intimate a lot of familiarities with, where it's like, that was never the desire to be like, oh, I'm going to make it. It didn't exist.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. Like, how are you going to make a career out of this? It's like, what?
I never really had a downer on bands when they got signed to a major because I thought, well, it's what you're doing it for. Mm-hmm. Who wants to play to 20 people the rest of your life? Especially when the band's good.
Right. Why keep this to this small audience? Yeah.
So I was always like stoked for people who sort of went on. And,
so when those discussions were happening in the early 90s of bands, I mean, when obviously, Green Day, Jawbreaker, Quicksand, all those bands were obviously like...
Yeah, but that first group, like Dookie, that first major label, I don't think it holds up, but at the time it was a great record.
Incredible, yeah.
You couldn't say that wasn't a great pop punk record.
No. And
Quicksand, that Slip is brilliant. I still listen to Slip.
Yes.
To this day.
Exactly.
I think an absolutely solid record. Helmet, Meantime, that's
Totally.
I mean, the only thing you would argue there is like that someone at Interscope was stupid if they thought they were going to sell 5 million records.
Oh, completely. How are you going to market this? And it's like, then you see it's like bands like Orange 9mm getting signed and you're like, what? Like
that was probably a step too far.
that was definitely the straw that broke every camel's back. Where it's like
Into Another. I remember seeing Into Another at CBGB's at the Revelation all day.
Sure.
And they had all their model kind of girlfriends sat on the back of the stage. We were all going.
You're like, what's that? This is crazy.
Oh my god, Chris, my friend, would kill me, but I never liked them.
Yeah,
I couldn't get on with them.
Well, I think a band like Into Another inspires. You either love them or you absolutely just hate them and don't understand where they're coming from.
Yeah. And I've never ever got them.
Right,
but it's fun to go and see all that stuff, and I feel. Well, I made friends that I still speak to now, back in through music and stuff.
And I think I really do. I mean, I think that's rare for most quote unquote normal people, to have these long lasting, because it's like, it's like once people are done with secondary or high school, whatever, it's like, you have like your one or two friends, and it's like, like there are people that I'm still in touch with that I went to high school that, I still consider friends. But then there's, the type of people that I've stayed in touch with in the music industry, it's like, that lasts for years and years, where it's like, you just can't, it's just because you have that common understanding where it's like, okay, like, you know, I mean, you and I have never met, and then we were immediately, into another,
yeah. And
we're good.
Mention that to someone else, and they'd be like, "What?
Yeah.
Into what?
Why is that relevant? Why is that?
Yeah.
Why is that? I don't even know what that is." And then it's like, where do I even begin explaining this to you? It's impossible.
Well, yeah, because you can't.
No.
And you know, I did Amoeba. What's in my bag?
Oh yeah.
And I did it this week, and I bought the Texas Reason album.
Sure.
And I was like, because I was like an old emo kid, and then I was like, oh no, that sounds terrible, because emo is like really rubbish now, isn't it? And
because they're going to be like, oh, you're super into Fall Out Boy and My Chemical Romance?
Yeah. And then I was like, well, I was kind of into like San Diego Screamo, and then I was like, oh no, because now that's also really terrible. And it's basically all that stuff is now hair metal.
Oh yeah,
it's like the new
Black Veil Brides, of course, right? Yeah,
like
you're just like, what?
And I'm like, no, I really loved like, you know.
Yeah. Any band that was on Gravity,
Antioch Arrow,
of course. If Emulation put it out, I'm into it.
Iconoclast, that 7-inch where the bass player sings that one track, "I Love You Less Than Apple Pie."
Yeah,
I fucking love that record.
Yeah,
to this day,
it's incredible.
Yeah,
and so the like you said, with working at record stores, it was really fun for you to obviously recommend music and like that. Because obviously before the internet was obviously what it is now, where you have recommendation engines recommending a bunch of bands to you, where it's like you did feel like that, you know, when you got exposed to something through a record store, either by you just discovering it on your own based on the little write-up or recommendation, or whether it was you actually physically playing in the store and someone having the courage to go up to you, who is this?
Yeah. Well, I went to Amoeba. I've been 3 times in this last week. That last time I was in, the clerk was like, wow. This was when I did what's in my bag. And I was buying my stuff, and he was like, this is the best sale I've had today. He was like, looking through it going,
you're like, I get this.
Skinny Puppy, Ian Rail soundtrack, like all this kind of weird, you know, whatever.
Right.
And I was like, oh, thank you. And he was like, oh, well, what? You know, I think he just said, oh, what do you do? And I said, oh, I run
do a label. Yeah.
And he was like, I love that label. We're really big fans here. And I was like, cool. And he's like, oh, you should check out my band, because we do this kind of really dark wavy type stuff, and they're really good. And I always think that's really cool, because there is, in record stores, there is a connection that just because you're in there buying, there's a connection with whoever else is in there.
Yeah.
It's you don't get that. You don't get that when you go into like Urban Outfitters.
No.
Or The Gap.
No.
Whatever. I guess maybe comic books may be like that.
Yeah.
But record stores are definitely, you're buying records.
Yeah.
You're right.
Well, I mean, I think you hit the perfect point where it's that, like, I mean, you could probably say that for like a baseball card shops or whatever. It's like any sort of like, and obviously it's a stretch to call Amoeba a mom and pop, because obviously it's so large, but it still has the same tenets of what it began. But any sort of like cottage type industry, even though the industry may be fucking massive, it still has that little sense of community where it's like a kid can ride his bike down a local baseball card shop and like hang out with his other 12-year-olds, and then like a 50-year-old guy telling them how they need to buy the newest rookie card or whatever. Like same sort of experience.
Yeah.
And so so obviously, like, you know, for the past couple of years, you've obviously been at, you know, Rough Trade East, and that's your full-time gig, what you've been doing as far as the record store and stuff like that. Are you a buyer there, a manager there?
I left.
Right, I know you left, but I mean, that was how long did you leave?
I left in November.
Okay, yeah.
I was brought in to open Rough Trade East because they had only got experience of smaller stores, like 500 square foot.
Sure.
This was 5,000. I kind of grew up, obviously, as we said, like in indie stores, but then I worked at HMV for a spell.
Okay, got it.
Management.
Got it.
Didn't really like it because it was too corporate.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. and for me, I remember like one day playing I Am Spoonbender, and I'd ordered like 10 copies of it, so I was a buyer.
Sure.
And one of the bosses was like, what on earth is this? I was like, well, we've sold 4 while it's been playing. No one else in town is selling 4 copies of I Am Spoonbender in 20 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he was like, put Madonna on. And I was like, everyone knows what Madonna sounds like.
Is this
and he's like, yeah, but it's out this week. I'm like, whatever. And it is that kind of thing. And I'll be honest, the people I worked with were really cool. And there were lots of people on the floor that were really into music. Pretty much everyone in management was not, and they were not. not my kind of people.
I'm sure they were looking at it from the terms of it's like that they're running a business,
But they are,
but it didn't matter what they were selling. They could be selling pots and pans. They're just working in retail.
And I do understand that playing that weird kind of stuff is not anything they would get or understand. So I think the fit from both ways wasn't perfect, wasn't great.
Well, because here you were just like, you're like, I'm working at a record store. And like, I'm working at a larger record store, but I'm still a fan of what they're doing. Yeah.
But back then, though, it was still, H&V was still a good store. And we had like a huge metal section with a metal buyer. It was like 30 foot section. We had a hip hop section. Yeah. We had, it was
hitting all genres.
It was good. And I did enjoy it. And I learned a lot working in that environment. But it was obvious it wasn't going to be forever because... I got tattoos, and they were like, you can't wear a long sleeve shirt. Oh, yeah. You have to take your nose ring out, and I'm not particularly alternative. No, yeah, you don't. I mean, I didn't have pink hair. I didn't. It wasn't.
That's super edgy.
Yeah, and then eventually, it just kind of wears you down. That you're just like, what? Everyone here has got tattoos, and it's like 90 degrees, and we're having to wear long sleeve shirts because they're scared. You might frighten someone off.
Right, they're buying the newest Michael Bolton and they'll be like, oh my God.
So I don't think it was ever a fit from both perspectives.
Sure.
That was ever really, really going to work.
Sure.
Long time. So, and then I got out of retail for a year. I got like this really boring office job, like working for this company that's used to sell things for people on eBay, when eBay was still kind of new and people didn't understand. So they would bring us their stuff. It's completely ridiculous company. Right. People would bring you their stuff.
And you would list it for them.
You would go, I reckon you could get $20 for that.
You were an estimator.
And then you'd list it for them. And then, of course, you never got anywhere near what you said. And then you get people screaming at you, those Prada shoes are worth X amount, and you only got me $5 for them and stuff. And I'll be honest, I spent the whole year just mooching around on the internet.
Yeah, of course.
Bored out of my school, because it wasn't for me. And I had a friend, an ex-MD of H&V, rang me and said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm doing this. And he said, ever consider going back to retail? Yeah. Music retail? And I said, no, not really, because I kind of like my weekends.
Sure.
Even though I'm bored, I like 9 to 5. Right. And he said, He said, Rough Trade are looking for someone to open their new flagship store. And I was like, all right, I'll talk to them.
It's Rough Trade. Are you kidding me?
And if you're going to go back... Right. And I went and met them, and we got on, and we had a lot of meetings, and I had to do a presentation. I mean, it was way heavier than I thought it was going to be.
Sure.
Yeah, they took me on, we opened the store.
Right.
I sort of sailed the store through those choppy first few years.
Of course.
Pete and Nigel, the original co-owners, are awesome. Awesome people.
Well, and you see such a... for most of the labels that have obviously existed over in the UK for so long, 4AD, whatever, like all those labels that have such a long history, and you're just like, you see at the core of it, you're just like,
same people.
Yeah, these are people that have loved music. Right. And it's like, it just happens to be that like all of a sudden now they're in a much larger environment because of the quality of music they're releasing.
And I really loved it. I loved my job. And then when we originally talked about opening a store in New York, we were like trying to find someone to run it and couldn't find anyone. And I said, you know what, guys? I'll love to go and do it. I love New York. I spent a lot of time there in the 90s. I was like, I'd go and do it. So they were like, that's cool, but who's going to do this? And I was like, well, we'll figure that out.
Right.
And then New York took so long, like so many years.
Yeah.
I mean, it really took it out of me.
Sure.
And we found a space, we lost a space. I went over, I found a space that they were about to move into in September. And then, the amount of time it took to even get to the point where we were processing my visa took like another year and a half, and put a massive strain on like my personal relationship. And, and that kind of crumbled away because it was just, no one knew what was going on. And I was staying at friends because I was like, I'm going to move next month. I'm going to move next month. And
so you were just in this like perpetual state? You were just hanging out.
Still running the store.
Right.
I'm still running Rough Trade East. And then I started the label just not because I was bored, because that sounds terrible, but because I needed to do something.
Right, you needed that
Other than
outside stimulation.
waiting.
Sure.
And I genuinely only ever thought the label would be 500 units.
Yeah.
We might sell them. It would be cool to do, and I'd be quite into it. And then before I knew it, my Death Waltz stuff is taking over Rough Trade, and I'm getting into Rough Trade at 8 in the morning, but I'm not doing any work till 11 because I've got so much Death Waltz stuff to do. And I really struggled trying to balance it out and give it my best. And then and then with Record Store Day as well, which
I know. When did you become the sort of spearhead? Because it didn't start this quote unquote start the same year as what we launched in the States, right?
We did the year after.
That's what I thought. Okay.
So for that, for 4 of my 5 years at Rough Trade,
right,
I did Record Store Day.
You were the Record Store. You're basically the Record Store Day coordinator for all the UK.
Which that starts December. We had meetings with labels, and then in January, bang, and it's so.
Oh, dude, it's huge. Yeah. I mean, especially I've gone every single year, and I mean, it just in the States, it's hilarious because you're just like, are you fucking kidding me? Yeah. Like these are, you look around, it's like these are people that 2 years ago wouldn't have any fucking clue what a record store is, and then now are so devoted to the format. It's like that's great.
Yeah,
and it's also just like wow, great marketing.
There definitely became a bit of a strain and balancing home. I didn't balance home. I just worked.
You just worked, right.
Solidly. And then...
I mean, it must have been impossible for you to maintain any semblance of a normal relation, or not even a normal relationship.
Yeah, you just can't. I would go to dinner and be on my phone.
Sure.
Working, because if I didn't, I don't know when I would do it.
Right.
So, I struggled with what I was going to do for quite a while.
Sure.
And also definitely didn't want to let Pete and Nige down at Rough Trade.
Right.
Because they've been so good to me.
Sure.
And, it was really putting me under a lot of pressure, and I was really beginning to freak out because I thought, I don't know how, I'm going to have to give up the label.
Sure.
If I go to New York, because opening a store that size in New York is it's 5 years of your life. Right.
Of course.
And, in the end, I just thought, I've got to do the label because it's mine.
Right.
It's my idea.
I gotta roll
something that I wanted to do forever.
Sure.
So it was a really, really tough decision. And seriously, when I took Pete out and told him, I thought I was going to burst into tears. Sure. I was just like, oh my God. But once I told him, and the weight was kind of lifted off my shoulders, and Pete was like, oh man, really don't want to lose you. I've got no idea what we're going to do for New York. I've got no idea what we're going to do for the UK.
Right.
But those opportunities, these do not come along very often.
Right.
And I've been in your position, and I did what I needed to do. So you've got to go and do it.
That's amazing. I'm sure that was the point where it was like,
my God. And then Noreen, who was my assistant manager for 5 years, she's taken over the store, and she's doing amazing, probably better than I was.
That's awesome.
And the girl that they've got for New York's brilliant. And I just think it's best because my head wouldn't have been 100% in it, and I am 150% into the label.
Sure.
I mean, the label, people don't really believe me, but it's just me.
Right.
I have...
A lot of people have this public perception of you having the staff of minions. Yeah,
which is just nuts. I
right.
can't afford to do that. I mean, I've got Alex, who's awesome. He's my packer.
Okay, yeah.
And he does all the customer inquiries and stuff like that.
Sure.
And he's great. I employ him 2 days a week, sometimes only 1 day a week.
Right.
And he takes care of all the packing, etc. But
sure.
Everything else
it's running through you.
Is me because I'm a control freak.
That makes sense where it's your vision. I was supposed to say, how did that work? Obviously, you managing a staff at a record store.
Well, because I was quite, this is what we're going to do.
Right. Dude, it's so funny that you are that type of person because the guy that I worked for at my record store, because I came in, same sort of thing where I was just hanging out every week and he's like, oh, do you want to work here? And if I didn't file something to his standards and appropriately, I've hardly ever been yelled at in my life, my parents, anybody, and he would fucking ride me so hard.
Really. I never did that. I was never
I mean, yeah, you seem like a
horrible.
Right. But
I was always fair, but Pete always used to say, you know, you're good at being the bad guy in a way where you're not an idiot. Like, where people don't hate you.
Right, sure. Yeah, you're able to kind of like, yeah, I mean, because you strike me as a calm person. Like, you're not like.
I don't know if I'm calm.
Really?
I've probably got calmer.
Well, yeah, I think age has a tendency to do that to people. Where it's like you're able to mellow, but you said you weren't yelling at people.
No, not really. And I mean, if I did, it was never like a horrible.
Yeah,
you know, I'd never do that.
Right.
You know,
just because there obviously has been the resurgence of vinyl and people, you know, care about it and like look at what you're doing or what you've been able to accomplish in such a short period of time. And like you said, where it's like you receive a lot of. Or not a lot, but you receive criticism and people are looking at what it is that you're doing and are probably like, oh, look at this fucking guy. Like, he's coming in doing this thing. Like, obviously, and if they do even like 4 seconds of research, know that you obviously have a pedigree where it's not just like...
Yeah. I mean, I've been really lucky because I've worked in the industry for a long time.
Right.
I know a lot of people.
Right.
So it's made it easier.
Right.
For me. But it's not, I mean, you know, it's still difficult.
Sure.
I signed I haven't even signed it yet. We're signing a contract next week. It's taken a year to wrap up.
Right.
You know.
Sure.
So, in fact, I had my first meeting last year at NARM about this huge release.
Sure.
So it's, you know, and it's a lot of chasing up. It's a lot of work.
Right.
You know?
Well, it's a lot of coordination and the ability to like put these pieces together in order to make it all work as one collective thing moving forward.
And, you know, just worldwide distribution deals and stuff like that with all these different people and making sure things are sent out correctly to the distributors and getting decent prices. And then, you know, the one thing that I'm really like super proud of is that every release is like so thought out. Like there's a, you know, like there is a reason why that vinyl is that color. There's a reason for this and you know, everything. So
yeah, it's not just like do whatever.
Yeah,
throw it together.
Yeah, no, exactly. So you know, you see other people coming up and doing stuff, and you're like, that's cool. But you know, I mean, for me, it's. I mean, we're releasing Maniac, the new Elijah Wood film, which I saw last August, and it blew my mind. And the soundtrack's phenomenal.
Sure.
And immediately spoke to my friend who had acquired it for the UK.
Oh, okay.
He put me in touch with the producers, and then we've been discussing it forever and ever, trying to get the contract right.
Yeah.
And now, you know, just got the artwork approved, and I've been bugging my plant to do something special for it.
Okay.
So I really push like the guys who press my records.
Sure.
And I think they hate me, but secretly they really like it.
Right, they're like, oh, he's challenging us. Yeah. We got to get this done.
Because, I've got a big wish list of stuff I want to do. And,
right.
And I'm one of those people that thinks like, why can't you do that? I don't understand why you can't do that.
Yeah,
you know?
This exists in my head. I mean, why can't you make this happen?
So, but, you know, they're really great at, you know, they do crazy tests for me.
Yeah.
You know, they're really good, so... It's really good to work with people like that.
Of course.
And the guys at DMS, Disc Manufacturing Services, are just the most amazing people.
Well, it's cool because I just always like, I mean, the idea of obviously like controlling the vision of what it is that you're trying to do and then surrounding yourself with people that are like-minded and are able to help you execute what it is you want to do. Like that, I mean, that's both of those steps, while it sounds like you can say it very easily, it's fucking hard to do. And so it's cool that you've obviously are like, all right, I didn't make this massive life change, dedicate myself to the label and be like, this is what I'm doing for the unforeseeable future.
Well, yeah, I know, and that's the scary thing.
Sure,
because,
of course.
You know, you're
taking a huge jump.
Well, and I mean, everything's a risk, especially in this day and age.
Of course.
Especially in the music industry or film industry or any creative
the entertainment, the artistic industry as a whole, I
think, you know, nothing's certain, that's why, you know, I wanted to not slam out loads of releases, but I wanted to like have a really healthy catalogue in that first year, where people would go, like with Devil's Business, which is my friend's film, where they go, we're going to buy this because it's on Death Waltz. That was always my intention, so I can do newer, smaller films. And they may be smaller runs, but people will go, we got to buy this because we know the quality is really good.
Right.
And we're just about to step it up again. We're going to I've got 11 and 12 out on June 20th, and that ends the second subscription service. And then we have Maniac and the Fog coming out in between the second subscription service and the third subscription service.
Sure.
And both Maniac and the Fog